Today, Anthony, I've got good vibes, and I think this might be one of our best shows to date.
What does UCMJ mean?
Let's find out.
I'm Anthony. Welcome to No Vacancy Live. That's my friend Glenn.
You're watching the #1 show in hospitality.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the one and only No Vacancy podcast. I'm Glenn Hausman. That's Anthony Melchiori, and thanks for spending time with us today, listening or watching the industry's #1 hospitality podcast. Anthony, so great to see you today, buddy.
So great to be seen, my friend. We're going to find out what UCMJ means.
We are in just a minute. I'm very excited because we've got an incredible guest today. Of course, I'm talking about Larry Cuculic, who runs BW Hotels Group, BWH, Best Western, and lots of their great brands, such as the World Hotel Collection, Best Western Hotels and Resorts, Vibe, Aiden, Sadie, of course, Sure Stay, which was one of the fastest growing hotel groups that are out there. Lots of great stuff. But before we do that, I want to ask all of you to take a look at our friends over at Avgo. They've been such great supporters of us. They've got that kiosk. It's going to help you be more successful. After all, you know you're having trouble finding people, especially in that overnight shift, to be able to check in and out your guests. Avgo allows you to do that while also giving your customers personal contact with a human being on the other end that engages them in the check-in process. Plus, it does lots of other great stuff too. Check them out at avgo.com. That's AAVGO.com. You got any thoughts on those guys?
No, and soon they'll have AI. So the person that's going to be a real human being is going to be a real human AI human being.
Yes. All right. Let's get right to it. Larry Cuculic, President and CEO of BWH Hotel Group. Larry, it's so great to see you. Much overdue. Finally, we get you on No Vacancy Live. How are you, sir?
I'm very well. Thank you. And thank you for the invitation to participate, gentlemen.
Yeah.
So Larry, Glenn,
sorry, I hit the wrong button. My apologies. This is because Dr. Producer Suzanne is not here, so I blame her for being absent today.
So Larry, let everybody know, and we'll explain your background in a second, what UCMJ means.
Uniform Code of Military Justice.
And why do you know that, my friend?
Well, I know that because of my military background. I was a judge advocate officer for many years in the military. I retired from the Army after 20 years of service and started really my second career, Anthony.
And where'd you go to undergrad school?
I went to West Point, the United States Military Academy. Got my Bachelor of Science degree actually in engineering.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Do you know John Russell also who went to West Point?
I believe I do. Yes, sir.
He was a good guy. He ran Wyndham, then Sendent, and all of that kind of stuff before going off on his own.
Well, people that don't really know West Point, I mean, it's an Ivy League college, basically. It's like they just take the brightest of the brightest, the smartest, the bravest of the bravest. And then after you graduated, then they sent you to what kind of school?
Law school.
Right. So it's amazing. Like, I want young people out there to understand, when you go in the Army, you go to West Point, doesn't mean you're going to be at the front line. We need lawyers, we need doctors, we need frontline people. And so your career, take us through your career a little bit. You graduated, you went to law school, and then explain what a judge advocate does. And everybody saw A Few Good Men, so maybe they'll relate.
If they saw A Few Good Men, I can actually relate pretty well with that. I graduated from West Point and then had my first tour of duty in Europe. Mm-hmm. And while I was in Europe, I applied for. I was a second lieutenant. I applied for the funded legal education program. The Army selects 20 to 25 officers a year, and sends them to law school.
Wow.
Recognizing upon graduation from law school, you have a military commitment for the privilege of them sending you to law school. So I grew up in Indiana. So I went back to Indiana, to Notre Dame for law school, a terrific school. I can't speak highly enough about Notre Dame and Notre Dame Law School. After I graduated from law school, I was very fortunate. I immediately became a prosecutor in military courts martials. That was my first assignment as a young attorney.
Wow.
So if you're thinking A Few Good Men, think Kevin Bacon at that point. I was that guy, and I did that for almost 3 years. The military then sent me to get my LLM, my advanced law degree in criminal law and trial advocacy. After that, I stayed at the Judge Advocate General School and taught for 3+ years criminal law and, again, trial advocacy, which really was my specialty at that point, having been a prosecutor. After that, I went to Fort McClellan, Alabama, and was the Deputy Staff Judge Advocate. I was then really fortunate into a nominative position, being the independent legal advisor at U.S. Special Operations Command, USOC, giving advice to the Commander-in-Chief of Special Operations Command on all special access programs, all black ops programs, and things, Delta Force and SEAL Team 6 and those types of programs.
So, but people don't maybe understand, when you went to Notre Dame and you went to advanced law school, you were still in the military and you were still being paid by the military, correct?
I was. It was a totally funded program. I was an officer in the Army while they sent me to law school. But keep in mind, Anthony, afterwards, I had a military commitment. First, I still hadn't served my commitment in regards to West Point, because they kind of put that in abeyance or on hold while they send you to law school. And so I had a very significant military commitment, but quite honestly, I don't know what else I would have done. I loved being in the military. It turned me into who I am today, and taught me leadership, justice, reasonableness, fairness.
And military bearing, which I think it taught me. So when you, I'm gonna guess, when you left after 20 years, you were a major or lieutenant colonel?
I was lieutenant colonel. When I left USOC, I went to a Command General Staff College, and that the Army sent me to. And then after that, I became a military judge. Again, think of A Few Good Men, the military judge who was presiding over Jack Nicholson's, or that court martial who was associated with Jack Nicholson. And it was at that point I made a decision based upon family really considerations to retire from the military. And I started my second career. I retired from the military as a lieutenant colonel, and started my second career. And I went to a law firm, became a partner in a law firm doing primarily litigation, product liability defense work, and then became an in-house attorney for that client that I had. Eventually became their general counsel, and then I came to Best Western as its general counsel in 2009.
Yeah, you served in that position until you took over the CEO position in October of 21, I guess it was already. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. Well, I actually started December 1st.
Right. But the big announcement was made during the annual conference when Mr. Kong was retiring, and that was in October of that year. Yeah.
So it's safe to say, if it wasn't for the military, you wouldn't be sitting where you're sitting.
That is a true statement. I would agree with that wholeheartedly.
Wow. I think Anthony feels the same way, right, Anthony?
You know me. Yeah. It saved my life, period, end of story. I don't know what you were going through at 19, but I was in a good place, and it saved my life. And after 4 years, I didn't have a commitment because I went to basic training, came out of sergeant, got my degree, got my 4-year degree in 3.5 years at night while I was in the Air Force, because when I got out, I didn't want any bills, and I wanted to be advanced, because the time I got out, I was 25, because I spent a little too much time in high school, which I should have spent a little less time. They liked me so much, they invited me back for a year. And but when I got out of the Air Force, it was the happiest day of my life, not because I got out of the Air Force, but like, as I said before, I felt bulletproof. Up until I had children, the military made me feel bulletproof, that there was nothing I couldn't tackle. And when I went in the military, I barely got out of basic training. I was so nervous and scared. Yeah. So it was absolutely, and my book's about to launch, and in there's a story about my underwear drawer and how my underwear drawer was the first step of my confidence. Folding my underwear drawer than anybody else in my battalion.
Hey, listen, you've got to start somewhere. And speaking about starting in places, you coming into the hospitality industry as a general counsel, I think that really just shows to everybody that you could find your love for hospitality in the most unexpected places. When did you realize, when you came aboard Best Western, working on the legal team, that hospitality was where you wanted to embrace, and how did you find your love for it?
Well, I was coming out of the transportation industry, a manufacturer of semi-trailers, a company called Wabash National Corporation. So I was associated with a product, a commodity moving product. And while it was a challenging opportunity for me, I and the military does this, Anthony, you may agree that you yearn for something different on occasion. You want to try a new challenge. You want to grow professionally. And so when the opportunity presented itself, it seemed like the right move for me. And because you're moving into an industry where your responsibility is to make people happy, to meet their expectations. And it's something that seems to fit my style. And then it took a while for me to understand what's unique about Best Western is its membership association and the closeness you have to our hoteliers, and how you have this sense of pride in the team that you are. And I think, Anthony, military background, you understand it. It's like you're this, I'll use this term, team of teams almost. And we had Coach K at our convention last year, and Coach talked about this, about how you are this organization that have a shared responsibility to one another. And that's, I think, one of the things that make Best Western special. And it seems to fit my leadership style. And so I was really so honored to be offered this position. And the first year and a half now, people say I smile more now than I ever did as the general counsel. That's for sure.
Well, you're allowed to now.
Yeah, when I first met you, when you first introduced, I like, oh, he doesn't smile much. And now after seeing you on the show, like you definitely smile a lot. But when you were in West Point and in the military, the one thing that, at least what I've heard from my mentor, who was director of leadership at West Point, where I was attached to an Army base for a while, and everything I learned in the Air Force was, you exist for one reason only. You exist for the team. You exist to make everyone better and to support everyone. And especially as a leader, as you were, I wasn't a leader until I was a sergeant. And even that's kind of sketchy because there's a lot of sergeants. But as a leader, you're responsible for men and women, life and death situations. And you take that real seriously. When was the first moment in the hotel business that you understood from an employee line level position what it was like to be in the hotel business? Was there a moment, or was it just a bunch of moments?
It was probably, I would say, I'd have to think about picking one particular one, but your feelings about it evolves over time. It's almost organic that you start recognizing the importance of every member of the team. And the importance of the front desk team member and the housekeeping team and the breakfast attendant and it's like when I go to a hotel now, I look at it very differently than I did before I was in this industry. I recognize how that organization, that team has to function together. And then you start realizing how important leadership is at that level, right? How important that general manager is, and how important the ownership group is that has to enable that GM to do the best that he can leading his team. And how important, I'll use this term, it's probably overused, but the culture of that team is, and so I don't think it was any one point in time, but you see it, and I think you appreciate it more and more the longer you're in this industry.
And in the military, one of the things I learned is when I came out of the military, rank is critical in the military, and rank controls everything. So you don't really have a say if you're given a direct legal order. You have to follow that order to the T. And you can have an opinion, but if the commander, the person above you, says something, you have to do it if it's a legal order. Now, when you leave the military, you have to do the same thing without the rank. Even though you're a general manager, a supervisor, or an owner, that doesn't mean people are going to follow you, because they can't go to jail for not following your order. And that switch of really kind of leading people or managing people without that traditional military standard was a little difficult for me coming out of the military because I was a little bit of a-hole, if I'll be the first couple of years, because I was insecure,
Right.
I was incompetent, but I worked for the commander, so I kind of had power, even though I was a lower ranking person. And so it took me a couple of years until someone said the words of, "You can fire me, but you can't take my spirit," and it changed my life because I realized, oh, I'm not in the military, and I've got to earn my rank by relationship and by not using people as tools. Not saying the military does, but using people, and everybody's got to win something, and to be compassionate. And it took me a while.
I think I would offer that in today's labor challenged market, what you just said is tremendously important, Anthony. You have to understand how to help people be successful. You have to let people know that they make a difference. You have to let your team know that their opinions matter. You have to lead with some level of flexibility and understanding and compassion, where in the military, that may not have been the case. But you know what, I would think, if you look at great leaders in our military history, they led by example, and they did care for and showed compassion for their troops, or airmen, or seamen, and it's a leadership principle you can never ignore, really.
I had very compassionate leaders.
Yeah, for sure. So, Anthony, I'd love to start hitting some of the hotel industry topics. Do you have any more on the leadership?
I did, but as you said, I was about to say something. You said something that I forgot, so I'll come back to it.
All right, no problem. So, Larry, I just wanted to get into what you guys are going over there. And for our audience out there, I taped today on March 16th, ran a special episode of our Hotel Tech Innovators podcast that I do with Michael Frankel, where we spoke to Lee Pillsbury of Thayer Ventures. He's a big investor, and we talked all about the tumult that's happening in the banking system, SVB, Credit Suisse, and how it's affecting the hospitality industries. As we sit today, how are you feeling about this situation? Mr. Pillsbury seemed to think that it's really just kind of a blip as opposed to a wholesale freak out kind of a scenario. How do you see it?
Well, first of all, I am hopeful that I'll call it financial leaders in our government agencies will be mindful of where we are and what's occurring, and take the appropriate actions to, I'll call it, settle the economy. You know, this is really, I think, one of the first times in our industry that we see lenders kind of stepping back or being tremendously cautious while hotel performance is doing as well as it is while it grows.
Ever done? Yeah.
Yeah, and because we are doing very, very well. You know, will that continue? I think depends on consumer confidence, and I am kind of a glass 3/4 full guy. So I believe that consumers will continue to travel because they love to travel. But I do think myself and other CEOs are likely to be, and probably should be, cautious regarding spending at this point in time, because there's really kind of two pressures that I think our federal government has to recognize and deal with right now. One is the banking issue, and then at the other time they are trying to manage inflation.
Right.
And so there has to be some balance associated with it. And so making sure our banks are, I'll call it, solid financially is going to impact the other, and the other is going to,
Yeah, I totally know what you're saying, because already the industry's been under pressure with the interest rates that have been rising, that have probably prevented some shovels from going into the ground for new development. And it might have already been making some of the regional banks a little bit more concerned with where they're going with interest rates, right?
Yeah, that's important. Maybe, Larry, you can explain that. The difference between a regional bank and a national bank, and the regulations over a regional bank as opposed to a national bank, because the Dodd Act does not oversee the regional banks. Is that correct?
It's my understanding as well. That's correct.
Right. So what that means, basically, from my preliminary understanding, is that what happened at the bank that just collapsed with Silicon Valley Bank,
Yeah.
or
Yeah, correct.
So when that collapsed, that wasn't under the same federal regulations as most banks. And so so the concern of a run on the banks maybe is just, hopefully it's just, media, and it's really not going to happen because there's different systems and regulations that control most of the banks in the country.
I am hopeful that that is true, but I would also hope that regional, or I'll call them federal, or banks that do business under the Dodd Act manage their risks accordingly, or carefully, such that they're not overextended, such that they're managing their risk appropriately, and that they don't become, I'll call it topsy-turvy, with regard to interest rates, their lending practices, their risks that they're willing or unwilling to take, such that they're protected on the downside. And I'm very hopeful that what happened with Silicon Valley Bank is an anomaly, that they took on too much risk. They didn't hedge on the downside, which I think is what most people are saying. And that other banks are heeding what occurred and taking a look at their lending practices. That might put some pressure on new construction. But if it's I'll call it a solid, good project that pencils out well, we're still hopeful that banks recognize that you have consumer confidence in our industry.
And the Dodd Act doesn't allow you to over leverage yourself. You have to show an investment of capital basically backing up your risk. So
right. However, that was changed in 2018 from a higher threshold to a lower threshold. So that was separate from when Dodd was enacted after the financial crisis in 2008.
Yes. But you still have protection that you didn't have at Silicon Valley.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
So, but listen, man, we've lived through a lot, haven't we?
Definitely. And Larry, I would think, I know you came into the position in December of 2021, but we're still in the thick of the COVID crisis, right? So everything that you were doing during as SVP and general counsel back then during that crisis, and then taking over the reins of the organization, it probably helps you not go home and worry at night and keep you up, because you've already been through the worst we could ever be through. Whatever this is might seem like a little anthill compared to a giant mountain. At least that's how I see my life. Are you seeing it the same kind of way?
No.
Me either. That's funny you said that.
Really? I just figure we've been through the worst already. Everything else just doesn't seem like a big deal. Like all these problems seem much more easy, much more approachable to.
But there's certain things, and again, I'm an optimist, but you have to also recognize that there are things beyond your control, like global political instability.
Yep.
That's something that we can't control, but recognize. I think about that a lot because we're a global company, right? We have thousands of hotels in Europe and Asia, and as a result, I can't be North American centric.
Right.
I have to think about just and not our financial issues,
right?
But what's happening with regard to Eastern Europe, or what's happening with regard to China. And how that will affect our hoteliers, again, because we have over 2,000 outside North America. So, Glenn, I would love to sleep easily every night, but I will tell you, I take Ambien every night. So there you go.
And as a military leader, you understand the consequences. I mean, Russia just took down the drone, right? They poured gasoline and took down the drone. And with all the instability, I agree with you, Larry. So when you said that, when Glenn, you were saying that, I was like, you knew the pandemic. It was like you had no choice. It was like we're down. So whether you're Russia, China, us, it's like everybody's dealing with the same problem.
Right.
This seems a lot more. You really can't hold it and you don't know what it is because it's come from everywhere, and plus the economic instability. So I would agree. You can't shake it as well. We went through the pandemic. We can get through anything. This is a little bit of a scary time, but it seems like every generation has their scary time.
Yeah.
But let me just add this, Glenn.
Yes,
I
sir.
do agree with you to the point of the pandemic taught us a lot.
Right.
It taught us to be more forward-looking, right?
Mm-hmm.
So by way of example, we used to have 1-year strategic plans, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're now looking at, and we used to have a North American business plan and
Right.
an international business plan. This year, we determined we needed a global business plan
Fascinating.
with global key results that took into account all 4,000 plus of our
Mhm.
hotels, so that we recognize our strategies have to go beyond the borders of North America. And I think that you have to then make sure you're being thoughtful with regard to any strategy and how it can be, I'll call it regional,
Right.
in terms of its implementation.
And you also have a lot of challenges because you're a company made up of a lot of hotel owners that don't have 50, 100 properties. So it's a lot more having to focus on those individual owners and operators. Particularly, I know the North American audience pretty well, and you've got a lot of great companies in there that have had property 30, 40 years in some cases, which is great. But that hasn't stopped the company from moving forward and introducing a panoply of new brands over the last 7, 8 years, at least. I feel like every annual conference I've gone to in the last number of years, new ones have been introduced. So tell us a little bit about the shift that you're seeing from the traditional Best Western brand to brands that appeal towards that next generation of developers and guests in the soft brands family and the boutique brand family.
And Larry, in your answer, please inject panoply.
Panoply.
Yeah. Interject that word into your answer. I love that word.
That was one of the words you got wrong on that SAT that you didn't like. Yeah,
Wait.
Larry.
What word is that, Anthony?
Panoply.
Panoply.
Many.
Yes, we have
A variety.
We have a panoply of hotel offerings. It's I just when I was thinking about this last night, getting ready for our interview, because being a military guy, you always have to think and have a plan. It was this analogy came to me. I don't know if either of you fly fish at all.
No, but I have.
Okay, well, you need to. Honestly, it is life-changing. But when you go fly fishing, you have 10, 15 different flies, right? Mm-hmm. In your that you take with you, because you don't know what type of flies a fish is going to be biting on.
Interesting.
That might be a too simplistic of an analogy.
I see where you're going, though. Yeah.
Right. So you have to have a variety of hotels that have appeal with the variety of travelers that you have today and the variety of developers you have today. You know that some are looking for more unique offerings. You know that some are looking for, I'll call it a pure value stay. Mm-hmm. They all, of course, want great bed, great television experience, great, I'll call it bathroom experiences. Those are points of entry, of course. But generally, they could be looking for a different experience, more unique offerings that might take into account local experiences.
Right.
That means we have to grow remember, when I joined Best Western 13 years ago, we were one brand, Best Western. Yes. We're now 19. So we've recognized that we need to have a diverse panoply. Do you guys guess you're going to ring a bell when I say that?
I know. I should. All right. If he does it one more time, we'll add that signal. We'll add that sound effect.
Yeah. Boutique and soft brands. Who was that? Was that the Groucho Marx show? You guys are too young for that.
No,
No, we're not too young for that.
No, we're not too. No, we're definitely no Groucho Marx. Are you
Do
talking
you remember
about
the word of the day? And they'd ring the bell.
Yeah. Also,
Vaguely remember that.
he did the show. What's My Line? Is that what
Yes.
you're talking about?
I think
Yeah.
so.
The premise of that show was Groucho Marx was the host, and you'd have three people all pretending to be the same person, and then the contestant would have to guess who the actual person was.
I think he did more of a Johnny Carson kind of show.
He
where
might
he
have done that
interviewed
as
people.
well.
He did both. And yeah, I'm 57. Glenn's the youngest person on the show right now, so I remember that.
All right,
Yeah.
but anyway,
Tell it to Groucho.
yeah. Anyway, but you have to have a variety of hotels that appeal across. I'll call it the demands of travelers and developers, right? You know, we see a shift in developers. Best Western, you know, we do have, I think you said, Glenn, some hoteliers have been with us 50 plus years.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely. But I also know you're going to say that now there's that modern generation, the AHOA guys that have a lot of properties and want to have empires, right?
And that transfer of wealth from the I'll call it older hoteliers to their children, because really a lot of them got into the business because they wanted to establish their legacies. And so the legacy they built are the hotels that they built that they then pass on to their children and their grandchildren, and so that's very important. But they want to do it their way. So they may take a Best Western or Best Western Plus and say, I want to turn it into a boutique hotel like an Aiden, and give it a personality that has selfie moments in the lobby and do it their way and put their fingerprints on that hotel. And we want to enable them to do that and to be successful. And of course, to continue being a member of the Best Western family. And we can do that, we think, because we offer a great, I'll call it, platform system of people, technology, supply, revenue management, sales. So we can allow them to leverage what we have in terms of the strength of our platforms while remaining in the family and doing it their way, so to speak.
And what's good about the third generation coming in, second, third generation, is they didn't hear about the hotel business. They lived the hotel business.
Yeah.
They experienced the hotel business. So they may want a boutique hotel. They may want to kind of upgrade a hotel, but they understand what a par count is. They understand the importance of not only expenses, but revenue management. And that's really where they can build the wealth, because they understand the business from staying in the hotel, probably growing up in the hotel, a lot of these families, and really understand it. And then there's a little bit, some friction of, well, trust me. And then there's little, there's little goals put out there, and then they start hitting the goals, and then all of a sudden they're able to take over the empire and even grow it even more. And we've all seen that many, many times.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. When somebody becomes a Best Western hotel and they designate this person called a voting member, who, because so many of our rules, regulations, bylaws have to be voted on by our members. And I love that about Best Western, by the way. We are focused on the success of our hoteliers. And I will tell you this, we launched a couple of ballot proposals last November that closed for voting in December, and both of them passed at 90% yes votes.
Wow.
Which is like incredible, right? I mean,
Yeah.
90% of them voting yes. And that's with, over 1,700 people voting. So when you get that type of voter turnout and affirmation of the programs you're trying to establish, you're aligned. I think that's really important.
Right.
If we can explain what, I'm sorry, I'll let you finish.
No, but what I was going to say is, but when somebody becomes a voting member and they get to vote on things like that, like those ballot proposals that establish brand standards in our programs, they have to come to Best Western for a day for voting member training. And on Tuesday, I met with a group of brand new voting members who were here for, I'll call it indoctrination. And I always ask them, so tell me about your first job in the hotel industry.
Right.
And a lot of them are second and maybe even some of them third generation, right? And they've been handed down the asset, the hotel, as the legacy of their parents. And and to your point, Anthony, you know what they all say to me? Front desk, making beds. They grow up in this industry.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes them great, is they understand the nuances of of each responsibility at a hotel because they lived it.
Right.
Right. And explain to the audience that may not know, because I didn't know for years, why your brand is different than the other brands and why you have voting members in the other brands. It's different.
And what Anthony's talking about is the difference between the membership philosophy versus a regular franchising type of setup for your business. Larry?
Because as I understand it, is it a non-for-profit organization that the owners are kind of voting on everything, correct? Or is that changed?
No, our member hoteliers vote on our brand standards, our regulatory documents, our programs, like the Best Western Rewards program, and they vote on those things. They self-govern, and they elect their board of directors. In North America, there's 7 districts. They elect their representative. We have a governor's program. All of our I call it proposals filter up through, I'll call it the membership organization, and then they vote on them. Size of televisions, breakfast offerings. They decide the future. You know, we were formed over, I think, 77, 78 years ago by M.K. Girton, and as really kind of a referral network of hotels, and it grew into a membership association so that one hotelier could count on another to protect the goodwill and brand reputation. And I think that's what I like the most about Best Western. And having been its general counsel for all those years, I was able to meet them all over the course of 12 plus years before I became the CEO. And I know them and I know what's important to them. It's driving revenue to them, protecting the name of our beloved brands, and providing them the services and support that will make them successful. We are focused on our hoteliers. Last year, we have no shareholders, okay? We have no shareholders. Last year, we stayed on budget. We had a great year, and we returned $15 million to our members.
Wow.
Okay. And during the pandemic, by way of example, we stood by, we implemented a tremendously, what should I say, aggressive austerity program.
Yeah.
And we gave our members, we gave them fee relief of $65 million through the pandemic.
Wow.
We stood by them. We did not have to separate from a single hotelier during the pandemic for financial reasons. We worked with all of them, and it's that membership, member helping member, I think, shared responsibility that makes this organization so great.
Yeah, and it really helps you stand shoulder to shoulder, because if one person's not doing it well, everyone else has a reason to make sure they're doing it well, because the brand integrity is critical, as opposed to shoving things down to the owners. We came up with these standards in a bubble, and now we feel that what's best for our brands is now you have to do this. And we all know those horror stories of owners in other brands saying there's too much. There's too many standards that we can't afford. So you really have a unique situation.
Yeah, we do, and we leverage the legacy and leadership of our members to help one another. So we have like 225, we call them governors. And so it's one governor for like every 10 hotels, generally speaking. And we ask them to reach out to our members throughout the year and help them be successful. And share best practices and ask them what they need help with, and kind of bubble up through the organization good ideas. So we rely upon, I'll call it the leadership of the organization to make us successful.
Yeah. And speaking of, the leadership, the board, I think, is absolutely fantastic. They're really hands-on, and I think they help guide everyone so you can focus and get that 90%, because you have a lot of stakeholders that tell you where it's at. So you're not throwing something out for vote that people are going to be skeptical about. You've already got a lot of great hoteliers behind the scenes that are helping craft whatever programs that you're putting into place. Anthony?
And I guess as a lawyer that trains you, don't go into a courtroom if you don't think you can win.
Yeah.
Right. No, that's right. And actually the lawyer skills come in very important, being kind of a courtroom litigator, trial advocacy guy. I understand, and our members understand, if I can make the business case, they understand it. So it's almost like convincing a jury that something is true and in their best interest, and they should vote yes for. And it's kind of building that momentum so that when they go to vote, they're in that jury room. I don't have 12, I have 2,200 jurors. They understand the business case, and as a result, they vote yes.
What was a challenge going from being a lawyer for the company to sitting in the CEO position? That, and again, as a military guy, West Point guy, a very, very learned guy who has a lot of experience, I would imagine most of it you were prepared for. But was there one thing that you were like, oh, I didn't expect that you needed to get comfortable with?
So at first it seemed like it was going to be difficult to take off my lawyer hat and put on a leader hat, right? But I worked with the vice president of legal, who became the general counsel, and Jay Pritchard and I have worked together for 13 plus years. And so I knew the great leader of the legal team that I had, who could become the general counsel. And so I was able to comfortably say, I know Jay can lead this team and protect its legal interests well. So I had the comfort of knowing I had a great lawyer who was going to become the general counsel. I think you're always apprehensive when you're going to take over a company of this size and magnitude and its importance. I think the global responsibility was something that I had to come to learn to appreciate and embrace, because sometimes I think we can become too North American centric. And the other thing is, I think during COVID, we became territorial centric. And what I mean by that is, our partners in China were very concerned with the status of China, and in India and in South Korea and in Central Europe and
Italy.
France and Italy. But, everyone, all those countries were very, very cognizant of their citizens and their responsibility to their citizens. And so I think we kind of became, I'll call it, geographically centric. And so one of the things that I thought we really had to do was become global again. The other thing I really had that was kind of an aha moment for me was how collaborative everybody wants to be. And the learning of I think it's easier to be directive than it is to be collaborative.
Yeah. It certainly is. You wanted to continue? I'm sorry.
No, that's it.
Yeah. Okay. So, Anthony?
I think that's where most young managers fail. The ones that fail, I think they fail because it is much more challenging as a person that, again, learned the hard way to get buy-in in a real way, not buy-in just to move on, but a buy-in that was like, I want you to be happy because we're not moving on unless you're happy, as opposed to being directive, where we learned that in the military, and that was my point of rank. But that's when you become a true leader. And I've had so many great experiences just in the last year where I've seen people collaborate and for the greater good, where they have no really benefit to collaborating for what they were collaborating on. So that is the thing. If we can teach young managers that, I think we win all the time.
Yep. I will say that one of the places that you guys are excelling, it seems all of a sudden everybody is paying attention to what's going on in the economy sector, because the economy sector was so resilient during those dark days of COVID. But you were there, I should say, for sure, about 6 years ago when you guys launched the Shore Stay brand. And I think it might be the quickest to get to 400 properties globally, 250 hotels in North America that we've seen in the hospitality industry. Could you share a little bit about what's going on with that? And, feel free to compliment Brad LeBlanc and his development team for helping get over that.
Yeah. Brad LeBlanc and the development team have embraced Sure Stay. We recognized that there was no, I'll call this, industry leader in the premium economy segment.
Mhm.
And we also, I think, recognize that we had the type of infrastructure that could support that type of hotelier and developer. Again, kind of leaning into our platforms
Yep.
and the global reach that we have and our strong loyalty program. And so we got to 400, like you said, Glenn, very, very
Crazy.
quickly
Yeah.
because I think we were able to build momentum through a success story. Like right out of the gate, we were named number one in that segment by JD Power because we had brand standards, we enforced them, we drove revenue to them, we made them successful, and that success story kind of built the momentum for its continued growth, and it continues to grow and do very, very well.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think the platform is what's tremendously important, and the brand standards are very important.
So how do you see the customers then perhaps going from shore stay to the more traditional Best Western brands, and perhaps even into some more of the boutique brands that we've been talking about here today, Sadie, Aiden, Vibe, those kinds of things?
I think it's the value of the loyalty program.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a strong loyalty program, so if you have a great customer experience, you meet their expectations through the customer journey. They build their BWR, their rewards loyalty, I'll call it pocket book, and they have points. Then if they want to move upward through the chain scale segment, they can do that. We launched, it was like just a year and a half ago, what we call the FX2 program.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to wait till you have enough points for a complete stay. You can discount the price of your room, right?
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, if you get points for staying at a Sure Stay, and they're Best Western Rewards points, you can then use those points to discount your Best Western Rewards.
Oh, that's fun.
Rate, right? So all of a sudden, you can move upward, right? Move up, and then use it for that, I'll call it experiential stay. Like if you want to stay at a boutique property, you can.
Yeah.
And we have rich promotions in that regard. Like right now, we have our spring promotion on, right? And it's stay 2 nights, get 8,000 bonus points.
Yeah.
And it could be 2 nights back to back or 2 separate nights, and you're at 8,000. And you can do that twice and get 16,000 bonus points. Then you can use the FX2 program discount and stay while you're moving up in segments. So you have to, I like to use this term, build sticky guests.
Yeah, right.
And I think Sure Stay allows us to like be the initial stickiness almost, right?
And it's important when they graduate into their career and into their as they go on in their career, they can afford maybe more and they want more. They want to stay in your brand, but having more choices allows them to do that.
Yeah, and I'll tell you right now, I've got 2 soon-to-be 19-year-old twins over here, and they're cool. They love staying at the economy hotels because it's something that's affordable for them, and it still allows them to set the stage to have those experiences that younger people want so much more, and that's so important for the overall health and vitality of the hospitality industry.
And you say that like they're paying for the bill. You're paying that economy bill.
That's why I'm relieved they're staying at economy hotels. I know. One day they'll pay for their own rooms, and that'll probably be the proudest day of my life. Yes.
One of the things I like to go back to is brand standards, because we all learned a valuable lesson about 15, 20 years ago. And we don't have to go back into history, but we all know when everything started shifting. And brand standards are everything. And so when you have a company that is everybody's voting, so how do you, when you do have that challenged owner that you may have to get to the point of separation, how, as a collaboration of owners, how does that process work? And again, I'm sure it doesn't happen often, but when it does, is that like Best Western saying, hey, you got to separate, or is it got to be voted on?
So applications are decided by our board of directors,
which are all owners, for those that don't know.
Which are all 7 directors, right? We have 7 districts in North America. Think Northeast, Southeast, Central, Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Mississippi, Southwest California, Northwest, right? We have 7 of them. I think I just did 7.
Yep.
And they elect their director. Well, if we get an application for an Aiden, right, it goes before the board of directors, and they have to make sure that they look at the product. If it's a conversion, by way of example, the product, is it a good box? Does the property improvement plan make it an Aiden? Do they have the financial wherewithal to execute on the property improvement plan? Is it in a market, for an Aiden, by way of example, is it in a market where they can take that asset and move it up in terms of ADR, right? Because that's what you'll want to do with Aiden. So the board decides applications. And then back to your point, Anthony, about if a hotel isn't meeting expectations in terms of brand standards or customer overall experience, that hotelier and it's the voting member and the general manager who they could decide, have to come before the board of directors in our boardroom and explain why they have not been performing and what they're going to do to change how they're performing. And the board decides whether to give that hotel another chance. We call it a conditional extension.
Right.
And we may give it a PIP and give it a timeline to execute on that PIP. We're going to get a regional service manager in there. And we've done that along the way, by way of example. If we identify somebody who needs help, we get, I'll call it a coach in that hotel to help them.
Right.
But the point is they self-govern and they decide whether a hotel is going to stay in the brand or needs to move on.
Oh, that's good. And that helps the overall brand. And all of these owners are on the same page. They want everybody to be successful, but won't be able to achieve that if there are some people that aren't staying up to the standards that board sets.
Yeah, our board is very, they will tell that hotelier and make sure that hotelier understands what happens at your hotel impacts my hotel, right? The directors will look at them right in the eye and say that. Do you realize if the guest has a bad experience at your hotel, first of all, your ADR is going to go down, your occupancy is going to go down, but you're also impacting somebody choosing not to stay at my hotel potentially in the future.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Anthony, you got anything else for you?
No, it's an absolute pleasure. I'm sure you'll be at Hunter.
I will be at Hunter. I'm on a panel at Hunter with some other CEOs where I'm sure we'll talk about things like the financial situation in the United States. Of course, we're going to be very centric on development. Stephanie Rica, Stephanie, I'm sure, is going to moderate that panel, and we're looking forward to it very much. And I look forward to seeing you gentlemen there as well, I'm sure.
We will certainly be there. I'll be hosting a development panel myself, so that'll be fun. And Anthony and I'll be doing some little broadcasts from there also. So thank you. I look forward to seeing you next week in Atlanta, Larry. And
thank you for this kind invitation to just have these types of discussions with you for the betterment of our industry. We are. That's one of the beauties of the pandemic that you kind of talked about. We came out of it stronger as an industry because I think we recognize the importance of, I'll call it the brotherhood of all of our hotel brands, and we got through it together. Which I think is tremendously important. So I look forward to conferences like this where I can see other leaders in our industry and further discussions that can ensure our success as an industry on a go-forward basis.
And that's why I enjoy this podcast so much, because people outside of those conferences, most of the people in this industry don't even know those conferences exist if they're at the, at the higher level. And to have you on this podcast and have access to you, because we know how busy you are, is really it's important for this industry. And that people like you who've done this for years now come on our podcast, done a town hall with us, and really made an impact on young people trying to stay in the business because you're being so open. But this is the time of the show before we let you go, is we play a little game, is where in the world is Ron Paul today?
Ron Paul, of course, runs the World Hotels division for the good folks over at BW.
I'm sure you have a GPS on him somewhere.
Now, wait a minute. If you guys give me 30 seconds, I'll bet you I can find Ron Paul, who is Anthony's twin brother, and I can get him in here. And
he's in the office.
He's right across the hall from me, and I swear if I
What?
if
He's
I-
in
what?
Phoenix?
No, wait a minute. Let me see.
Or is the office the name for the Best Western corporate jet?
Hey, wait a minute. Well, let me try this. Hey,
Yeah.
Ron, where are
Hey.
you? Hey,
What's up, guys?
You know,
how are ya?
what- oh my God! You know what? It's like all three of us.
Let me get out of here.
Look at this. This is hold on. I gotta take a picture of this. This is ridiculous. Glenn, get out of the picture.
I know.
Man.
I'm going to remove myself completely.
Please, please, please. Hold on. That is a ridiculous picture. Hold on. I gotta get the camera out.
Post that one on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I'll totally grab a
funny.
screenshot of that.
What's so funny is Ron and I have seen each other like 600 times in the last year. And our conversation, if we put it together that 600 times, was maybe 2 minutes because we keep running past each other.
Well, that's
Good
part
to
of
see you guys.
Yeah, that's part of conference etiquette. Gentlemen, thanks so much. Will we see you next week, Ron? Are you going to be back over in Asia or something like that?
Yeah, I won't be there next week. Sorry, guys.
That's all right.
We'll see you next week.
Take care. Take care, guys.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Thanks so much. That was so much fun. I love when people share all of those things
Look at
beyond.
this picture, bro. That is ridiculous.
I know. I mean, beyond what's going on in the hospitality industry, I love learning about these people's journeys and showing all of you out there that you can come from anywhere and find success and maybe even achieve that position of becoming a
and
CEO
also
of a
it's
major
really
company.
good to understand because even me as a jaded hotelier, when you hear the chief legal counsel is going to be CEO, you're like, whoa, what's going on here? And then you hear the background, you understand, and you understand his philosophy. Like, oh my God, amazing, perfect person to come into that position. And then just as a military guy, like you just completely connect. Like it's like anything else, like a sorority, fraternity.
Yeah.
It's like a military guy and a military guy or girl. There's a connection, and there's just something special about it. So I really enjoyed that conversation.
I know exactly what you mean about the military, but I feel the same way anytime, like I find another fish head out there in the hospitality industry.
Yeah, and being
totally bond.
and being a JAG and being a judge on a trial in the military. I mean, that person is pretty much very respected. Very. It's like there's the generals, obviously officers, but the generals and then the judges. Like that, like there's a different level of respect. So, and you don't get as Rachel Ray once said to me, they don't give those jobs to anybody.
Yeah, that is true. And I'll tell you, those jobs aren't given to anybody, but anybody could download the audio version of our podcasts. Find that at Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, SoundCloud, wherever you get your shows. We are there. And if you're listening to us right now and want to see how alike Anthony, Larry, and Ron are, well, you can watch that on LinkedIn, Facebook, and of course, YouTube. All shows are housed at novacancynews.com. He's at Anthony Hotels. I'm at Traveling Glenn. I'm glad I made you laugh there.
You did. I usually try not to make any sound when you're talking, but
I know, but I love it. There's nothing I like more than making a transition and getting you to crack up. So there's one other piece of advice I have for everybody. Remember, you've got one life, so blaze on, and
be kind to yourself.
See you all next week here and there from the Hunter Show. No live shows, but we'll be in touch. See you guys later.